Hey everyone, I'm Ed Marks, the Chief Digital Officer for Health and Life Sciences, HCI Group and Tech Mahindra. I'm so excited to welcome you for another edition in our series on race relations. This has been our most popular series that we do because it is so critical to not only what's going on in digital technology today and in healthcare, but obviously the world and the United States specifically. And while we can't solve all the world's issues and challenges, what we can do is take demonstrable action and be part of solutions, especially when it comes to race. So really excited. So a couple things before I introduce our guest, Irvin Bishop, is this is live. So some of you will be watching this as a recording, but for those of you with us now live, we do it live for two reasons. The first one is it's more exciting, it's more engaging. So if you have any questions or comments, you can fill those in. So everyone knows how to do this by now. So just put in your questions and comments and I'll be sure to try to get to all of them. We had some already sent in ahead of time, so that's great. But at any time, feel free to engage with us. The second thing, it just makes it more exciting too, because you never know what's going to happen. Like this morning, my electricity went out. So fortunately, I had a backup plan, and so we're all good. But with that, I want to introduce our speaker. And let me just say one last thing. Racism is real, and it happens in healthcare, and it happens in healthcare tech. So really, our goal here is twofold. Understand, hear the voice of people, persons, executives just like us, but because of their color, have had a different experience, and it's real. When you hear the stories, it's real. The second thing is, what are the practical things that we all can do? Because it's not good enough to sit around. That's not good. We all have to take demonstrable action. So that's really the twofold goal. So we will talk about different solutions. So with that, Irvin Bishop, welcome. Irvin, I'll say one thing about Irvin, then let him introduce himself. You see the slide there about his amazing background. So Irvin comes to us outside of healthcare. So we've been very purposeful in this series to get all sorts of voices. And this one is from outside of healthcare, but definitely in digital technology. And so that's awesome. And we want that perspective to just give us that full-blown deal. And so with that, Irvin, I want to welcome you, and please take your time, introduce yourself and also your journey as a man and in leadership and what you do.
Sure, Ed, thanks so much for the introduction, and it's exciting to be here today to talk about this topic that I think is most important. My name is Irvin Bishop, and I've worked in the digital space for 20 years when it was e-commerce and then interactive and now digital. So I've got a little bit of experience in this area. I'll say my journey is that of, I started off in two places growing up, one in a small town in Alabama called Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So my grandparents were there, and I also lived with my parents in Washington, D.C. I won't bore you with schools and degrees and all that, but I'll say I spent time in telecommunications, a lot of time in consumer packaged goods. Now I'm in the engineering field, working on critical human infrastructure, and have had an exciting career in digital and other areas in technology in general, as well as marketing. And just excited to be here to talk today about this topic.
No, that's great, and we appreciate it. Can you tell us a time, because like I said in the beginning, not everyone can relate. And can you tell us a time that you've encountered racism, particularly in your career? How does it manifest itself?
Well, interesting question. So what I'll say is interesting perspective on racism and how you characterize it and what you classify as racism. What I'll tell you is something that happened to me. Actually, my first experience in corporate America. I started as a co-op, and I was in a large company. And my very first day, my manager came to me and said, "Irvin, welcome. Here's a software package. I need you to evaluate it to see if this is something that our team should use." And I said, "Yes, sir," and sort of sat in my chair. And I was a sophomore in college on this first co-op experience. I didn't know very much about computers. Most of my knowledge had been sort of practical knowledge and learning theory and languages and that sort of thing. but definitely didn't know how to evaluate a program. One of the team members, Black gentleman named Mark Stewart, walked by, later became one of my forever mentors, and said, "Hey, little brother, what's wrong?" And I was just a deer in the headlights. And I said, "Our boss asked me to evaluate this software package, and I don't have a clue. I don't know anything about it or even how to start." And he said, "Let's go get breakfast." I said, "Can we just leave without asking?" Co-op, right? So he said, "Sure." So we went to breakfast, and he sat me down and he said, "Listen, others that come that don't look like you, that are not co-ops that are of color, they don't get the same sort of introduction or foray to our team. They start off documenting systems, they get someone to help them, and he shouldn't have asked you to do that. But don't worry, he can't ask you to do anything that I don't know how to do, because he doesn't know how to do anything that I don't know how to do." And so he said, "What are you doing this weekend?" This was on a Monday. And I said, "Nothing." He said, "Well, don't worry about this. Just try to learn the system, do what you're doing now. This weekend, we'll get together and I'll show you the package." So what he literally did was he introduced me to the person at the company that did evaluations of software packages. Actually happened to be another Black guy. And he gave me the format for how to do it, and sort of the framework. I had to do all the work. I had to fill out all the information. At the end of the day, about a month later, I was supposed to present it, my findings, in a meeting full of people and our director. So had I not had this person help me, I would have miserably failed or really struggled trying. The long and short of the story is I presented that software package and my recommendation. Well, I got ready to get started, and my manager says, "Wait, Irvin, you may not need to present today." And I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Well, because I don't think the company's going to go forward with this. I found this on the printer, and it says we don't recommend the software." I said, "Do you mind if I look at it?" So I looked at what he was looking at, and it was my presentation that I had presented. And everyone just stood up and clapped. It was so well prepared. But that guy took me, got other guys in the company, had me present to them. They critiqued what I was doing, and gave me feedback on it, and I was able to present. Later in the company, I was able to do very well in the company. I actually surpassed where they were. I joined that company full time and worked for them for 13 years. But why did I think that was an example of racism? When I talked to those guys, and as a person at that company for 13 years, I saw new co-ops and interns come to the company. And I was one for actually 2 years. It took me 6 years to get out of college, because I co-opted one semester and went to school one semester. It was a totally disparate way they were treated. One was sort of brought in, mentored, got someone to help them. But when others came in, that was just not the case. Now I'm old, so this was in the 80s, Yeah. But it was a very different way of being treated. And what the guy said to me was, I said, "What do I owe you? Can I pay you for this?" He said, "Listen, all you owe me is that when others come in and you see them not getting a fair shake, that you take the time, stop what you're doing, mentor, coach, help them so that they'll be able to compete." And I've spent a large portion of my career doing just that, making sure that what I can do to level the playing field, to make sure that everyone gets a fair shake, I've tried to do that. But that was my first experience of what I felt like was being treated unfairly, because maybe I didn't look like some of the other people that worked there.
Yeah, no, that's a great example, Irvin. And the reason I like it is because of the subtleness. And that's what part of the series, sometimes the examples are so obvious, but most of them are really subtle. And that's the dangerous part. Because a lot of us lulled ourselves into thinking that, oh, well, we're not racist. Of course not. We would never do something that's like so big, that, oh, we would never do that. But it's these subtle things. And that's what I keep challenging all of our listeners, is that you really have to examine yourself closely. And for me, it was this book called Blind Side, where I took these little surveys and stuff after I read it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've got a lot of work to do on this man right here. And it really opened my eyes to all the subtle things that can happen. And then again, we have to take action, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And I think you already gave a great example of some of the actions that people can take. So that's really good. That helps our understanding quite a bit. A question that we had come in is, what advice would you give a Black professional that's interested in becoming a digital leader in a predominantly white male field, right? So at least in healthcare. So I don't know, Irvin, in some of the other areas like digital that you've served in, but in healthcare, it's largely white male. So if you're a Black professional that's interested in becoming a digital leader, what suggestions would you have?
Sure. Great question. I would say, first off, stay authentic. You bring something different. And oftentimes, especially in today's society, companies are hiring you not only because of your technical skills, but because you bring a different perspective. So even with that, don't just strive to be different. Also, seek to understand. People like to work with folks they can relate to. So don't just stay in your bubble. Go out, try to understand some other perspectives besides the ones that you may have grown up with or the one you've seen in your home. The other thing I say is expect to go deep. Don't rest on what you did yesterday, right? You have to constantly prove yourself. You have to constantly, work hard and show why you're valuable and why you need to be there. And you need to understand that, working constantly to be better. You've heard that. I've heard that. If you're a person of color, you're going to have to be better. You're going to have to, work harder. Well, my personal perspective is you should be doing that anyway. Now, that's probably a different perspective, right? But I think in order to be as successful, you need to try to be better and try to work harder anyway. Now, I don't think that it should be a criteria, right? I think you should be evaluated on a fair and equitable state, but I don't think that's a hindrance. I mean, being out front, working harder, doing better, knowing that that's part of the way you're going to be successful is something that is par for the course. You just are going to need to do it.
No, that's great. So what if you are a CIO, you've been a CIO, you've been a digital leader in consumer goods, you have this amazing background. What would you say, Irvin, to like me, your peer, I've been CIO for a while, different health systems, or chief digital officer. What would you say to non-Black IT leaders, CIO peers, to help them understand more? So be people like me who aren't like I said, there's nothing obvious. Like we would say, we wouldn't put ourselves in the racist camp. But there might be things, right, that we're unaware. And you already gave us some insight. Is there anything else that you would say to a non-Black IT CIO, just to be aware of? Or
Sure. One of the things I'd say would be this: don't dismiss new ideas because you don't understand the context necessarily, right? Now, what happens is, for example, someone suggests maybe we want to focus on a new type of currency, right? You may say, well, I don't think we should do that. That's a bad idea. But I would say ask that question, that second follow-up question. So why do you think that's a good idea? Doing that, sometimes you will learn something that you would have otherwise missed, and it's not on the surface. I was just in a setting where someone was suggesting, hey, we need to focus on different type currencies, and it was almost like, yeah, I don't think that's necessarily what we need to do. We've got Apple Pay, we've got some other things. Well, they came out with a stat that by 2025, I think it was 50% of people that don't have bank accounts but have smartphones, they're going to be using cryptocurrency as a way to pay for things that they purchase. Well, wouldn't that be important to know? When that fact came out, I saw the room start to turn, and people said, hey, maybe this is something we need to focus on. What kind of payments do we currently accept at our company? If that second question hadn't been asked because you didn't initially understand the context, you may have missed something that could have been very, very valuable to your business. So just that alone, I won't give you 10 things, do that one thing and say, well, why? Explain that, help me understand. And I think you'll find that you'll unearth a treasure trove of ideas that you may have otherwise overlooked.
Yeah, and it's good to have, like you're saying, a diversity, not only good to have diversity, but diversity of thought, and getting to that second level can really open up a lot of things and gain understanding of one another and other concepts. So we're halfway through. It's amazing
Wow.
how quickly the time goes through. And I want to switch now to sort of solutions, because we talked again about the basis for, hey, this is a really important conversation that everyone needs to have, and then we'd like to get practical. You already mentioned earlier a practical thing to do, and it was really related to a question that came in also, which is, specific areas, places that people who want to come in, like in terms of a mentoring role, that if you're looking, let me see how to phrase this a little bit better, is if you're looking, let's just say you want to start a mentoring program, a sponsorship, a co-op,
Mm-hmm.
and you want to ensure diversity. And maybe if you go to your traditional, I'm just making this up as an example, a university, and it's mostly white at this particular university. So maybe you need to shift. Where would be some good places that you could look for diversity of candidates? And I'm talking diversity across the board, to try to get these co-ops and internships and mentoring things going.
Sure. So there are some areas that have sort of a great pipeline of resources. Actually, just like in real estate, they say location, location, location. If you want to increase diversity and you're looking for diverse talent, I think the answer is pipeline, 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 right? So to give you a couple of ways to do that, there's the National Black MBA, that is a group of professionals that are all kinds of diverse talent. I'm actually a member of a group called ITSMF. It's the IT Senior Manager Forum. Now, what I'll tell you is that they have a pipeline of rock star talent in the IT space, every facet from security to programming to strategy, you name it. Actually, I was able to get my first mentor, best mentor I've ever worked with from ITSMF, actually the global CIO at Deloitte. And so I got them from being in that program. They have a program that's a management academy where they have hundreds of resources that come in and talent, some of the best talent from all these top tier companies around the world. They take them and mold them into these executives. Their goal is to get as many black, brown, C-level, executives to the C-suite. So they constantly mentor you from senior manager all the way to C-level executive. And it's really been, I think, one of the most important factors in my career as being a part of ITSMF and being able to grow and be mentored and coached through that program. So those are two, National Black MBA Association, ITSMF. Those are great resources to get a real strong pipeline of Black, brown, diverse talent.
Yeah, no, I love that. And the two sort of sub themes, Irvin, that I was picking up on your examples is you have to be intentional.
Yes.
So if your traditional way of doing things is not bringing you diverse talent, then you have to do something different. It's pretty basic, but I think we get stuck in patterns like, oh, let's just say in my fictitious example, I always go to the same university and I always get a lack of diverse candidates. Well, maybe you need to switch, or in addition to that university, go to some of the resources that you just cited to ensure that diversity. And the second thing, and again, the very subtle in some of the things you've been sharing, is that your diverse team is a multiplier towards success.
Absolutely.
So a lot of times we are thinking, and this is one of those areas that was like an aha moment for me. We think that we talk about the best football player. I'm just going to draft the best football player, and so in our mind, We don't think, though, about how that football player fits in with the rest of the team. And that best football player may not be the catalyst to get your team to be a winning team. It may be something different that you need in a team player. And so I just think when you have that diversity, and talking about diversity in all of its forms, it just makes for a stronger team. So that old analogy is, I don't think is helpful, really. And you really need to be intentional and think about the mix, the entire mix on a team. So
yeah, Ed, but two things I wanted to mention as well, sort of piggyback on your point. So diversity has to really be embraced by the company. I'll tell you this, diversity, it doesn't just make sense, S-E-N-S-E, it also makes sense, C-E-N-T-S. I say that because, firms that have diversity are, 45% likelier to report market growth, year over year, 70% likelier to capture a new market area. Those are just, the diversity of your team makes it a stronger team. I mean, my understanding is, there are really two types of diversity that I know that Gartner talks about. It talks about inherent diversity that involves sort of traits you're born with, like your gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, and then acquired diversity that you get from working with diverse teams and people. Those companies that have people with those kinds of talents, that's where you see the numbers that I've spoke about, that 45% likely to report, growth in the market and 70% likely to report that the firm captured a new market. So as you're looking at who you need to bring in on your teams, think about it from not just the right thing to do, and it is, but also from a profitability and growth perspective. And the last quick thing I'll say, I know we're running out of time, is sometimes, and you didn't ask me this question, but I want to say this to sort of execs of color. Don't be afraid, don't be scared to bring in other talent that look like you. Sometimes, believe it or not, diverse leaders, executives are fearful of bringing in people that look like them because they believe, oh, people will think I'm trying to do a favor or hook them up. As long as they're talented, as long as they're skilled, as long as they're the best fit for the role, don't be afraid to make those calls, because sometimes companies have you in positions to do that and to get to that pipeline that you were talking about earlier. So don't shirk your responsibility in doing that as an executive.
Love that. That's a powerful point. That is really a powerful point for both sides. Very powerful. Thank you for that. So we have another question, Irvin. So this one's going to take us back into our design capabilities. We have a question that says, have you noticed perspectives in user experience design, UX design, that are reinforcing racism? Yeah, go for it.
So yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question. So I'll give you a quick story to answer that. I'm gonna try to be very brief. So I was on vacation with my wife. We were on a resort, and they had this timeshare deal where they were, hey, can we get 45 minutes of your time? If we do, we'll give you $500 worth of coupons to do this and breakfast for 2 days. My wife's like, no. I'm like, I got this. So we sat down, Cliff Notes version, went through the presentation, and I finished the presentation. No, it was about 4 minutes left. And I said, hey guys, I'm expecting to get the gifts. Are we wrapping up now? They were trying to sell me. No. So we came back at the end, and I said, they were trying to close me, bringing other people. I said, listen, here's why I'm not interested. Bring your brochures out. I laid them out, and I said, no one in this brochure looks like me. So you're obviously not marketing to me. So when we're looking at things like the customer experience and the user experience, thinking about having the right talent to review those CX designs that you're preparing for customer usability, and not missing the fact that your customer talent pool, your client talent pool that you're trying to get market share, pocket shares, wallet share of will be diverse. missing that will definitely impact your bottom line. So I definitely see that in all kinds of ways that I'm seeing CX and design rolled
Yeah.
out in these days.
I challenge any of our listeners who don't really think this is an issue in healthcare to think about their C-suite, their boards, and then the patient mix. And is your C-suite and leadership and your board reflective of your population that you serve? And then look at it from that, also from the UX perspective of, you know, your websites and other materials like you're describing, Irvin. And I bet you find some gaps. And it's really important to have that awareness so that you can, again, you have to be proactive and make changes. So we're down to about 2 minutes. So if you do have any other questions, feel free to add those. We'll take any. That was a great question and really important one. And so if you're interested, please engage with us. I hate to get on the personal side, Irvin, but I know that your wife's a stellar person. The reason I can say that is because you are, and I know that
Thank you.
it has to be if she's going to marry you. But she also has a very unique role in her career. Would you mind sharing, like, in the last minute or two, just any perspectives that she has given her role and the things that she does as a professional?
Sure. My wife works in equity, diversity, and inclusion for a university, and what she's constantly talking to me about is when she talks to people about race relations, it's about get comfortable being uncomfortable. You know, if you have friends that are of color and you want to learn more about this, ask them how they feel, ask them what they experience. Don't try to come up with a major, big, dynamic program, but talking to them about what makes them feel uncomfortable. You know, think about inviting them when you're deciding to get together and talk about that latest initiative. And even if it's not working well, include them in the conversations, reach out to them. And I think what she said is things like microaggressions where people aren't even thinking, you know, wow, you're the most articulate Black guy I know. Yeah, may not be something that you're even conscious of. You may mean that as a compliment, but really trying to understand some of the experiences of your peers that are different than you will be important in helping better the race relations on your team and in business.
Yeah, that's gold. I mean, there's a couple golden moments here, and I think very helpful. And yeah, you need to, and that's what I always say too, Irvin, is you need to call it out. Like, I don't mind if someone calls it out on me. I want people to call it out on me because I want to learn. Because I don't do anything intentionally, but I'm doing some things subconsciously that need to be corrected. So I want you to tell me. And so your job as a leader, my challenge to our audience is your job as a leader is to call it out in other people. And you can do it in a very professional way. But if you see someone, you know, saying something like the example you were just giving, like they might say, oh, that Joe, he's, you know, the most articulate Black person. You need to call him out on that and say, hey, you know, you don't have to do it publicly, but privately later, you know, say, or it could be publicly, actually, if you do it right, that way everyone can learn. But you have to be proactive. You cannot sit back and allow that to be in your culture, and you have to eradicate it from the culture. And it takes bold leadership to do it. And if it's not us doing it as the leaders, then who's going to do it? So, you know, it's imperative that if we're going to solve this, that it starts with each one of us. We have individual responsibility and accountability to be that leader. Look, we're down to 30 seconds. Let's see, we have one last question. Oh, it's a thanks for a great conversation. Thank you. In 30 seconds, Irvin, not to put you on the spot, but anything else that you want to share with our audience as we close out?
Yeah, just to say, this is a complex issue. None of us have the silver bullet that's going to make it better. Lead with your heart, seek first to understand and then be understood, and realize that this is just one earth. We have to live together. And if we can figure out how to do that in a more collaborative, cooperative way, the world will be a better place and life will be better for us all. I think that's really what this whole conversation is about.
Yeah. Irvin, you're awesome. I'm so glad that we got connected by a mutual friend.
You know,
thank you so much for what you shared. I got changed, still getting changed. I mean, forever being changed and molded. So thank you so much
Awesome.
for your wisdom. Thank you everyone in the audience for joining us. Upcoming webinars, we are doing a healthcare digital transformation. This is an amazing person as well, Dilip Kishu. He's the CEO of Born, and this will blow you away what you're going to see from the company Born. And then we're going to talk about effective CMIO-CIO relationships. And then finally, we're going to end the year with a global perspective on transformation with my ultimate boss, the CEO of Tech Mahindra, CP Gurnani. So great stuff coming up, and we will continue the series on race relations as well. Thank you, Irvin, again.
Welcome.
Take care.
You
Bye,
too.
everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.